Today we celebrate the Immaculate Conception of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and sometimes I used to mix up this day what it referred to. So we hear the gospel about the Annunciation, and we sometimes think today refers to the Immaculate Conception of Jesus, but no, it refers to the Immaculate Conception of Mary. And so if you're like me and maybe you mix them up, a phrase that we can focus on to keep them straight is the phrase full of grace, full of grace. That helps us remember that today is about Mary. Preserved from original sin, Mary is able to receive God's grace and be completely filled by it. In particular, she is able to receive God himself fully in the person of Jesus Christ. This language of full, from full of grace, might remind us of the Hail Mary prayer, which we hear part of in today's gospel. Hail Mary, full of grace. And that's why we have the gospel today, is actually to point us to this truth about Mary, that she is full of grace, and it connects to the Immaculate Conception. So maybe we wonder, what does that mean for Mary to be full of grace? What is that significance of that? We can think for a moment about this word full. What does it mean to be full? Sometimes we'll talk about our hands being full, or a notebook being full, or our stomach being full. This fullness comes from receiving things, receiving food. And so there's a receiving part of fullness. But other times we'll use the word full in a different way. We'll talk about the end of a full day where we've given of ourselves, or we'll talk about how our heart is full. Often when we use that phrase, my heart is full, it's the result of giving of ourselves rather than receiving. And so fullness has to do with both receiving as well as giving. And this helps us understand what it means for Mary to be full of grace. Mary is full of grace that she receives from God and that she gives to the whole world, most especially by giving her son, Jesus. This is a beautiful thing about Mary, that she doesn't keep anything for herself. All that she receives, she shares. And this goes both for God's grace given to her and also for our praise and prayers that go to her. Everything we offer to Mary, she shares selflessly with her son. And that's why we can never have to worry about giving praise to Mary or having devotion to Mary, that it never distracts from Jesus. She shares everything with her son. And so really what we celebrate today is that Mary is a conduit of God's grace. That is, she shares all that she receives. She isn't filled up with God's grace just to kind of hold it there in a static way, but no, to share that grace with the world. And our second reading, though, from Paul to the Ephesians has a cool but slightly unnerving insight as well, that you and I are also called by God. Just as Mary was chosen by God, Paul says, you and I have also been chosen. And maybe you hear that and think something similar to what Mary said. How can this be? Each of us is aware of our own imperfections, and we're not going to be able to be conduits of grace perfectly like Mary was, but nonetheless, each of you has been chosen by God to be, again, a conduit of God's grace, to receive his grace and his love, and to share it with those whom you meet. And so Mary is a model for us. And this is a great gift of our faith in general, and of Mary in particular, that Mary is always a guide and a model for us. She always shows us the way to go. When I was growing up, I had an older brother, and I always wanted to do everything that he did. And sometimes that was good, and sometimes that got me into trouble. But with Mary, we can always follow her example. She'll always, in a very trustworthy way, lead us closer to Jesus. And so she's always a model. Everything she does reveals something about the spiritual life that we too can follow. And so, for example, that Mary receives the Lord and shares him, so too we want to do the same thing. Of course, sometimes it's hard to share the Lord's love with those around us. There can be people that are hard to love or hard to show generosity to, but again, we ask for Mary's grace to do so, and we recognize that receiving grace is then meant to be shared. And so, trusting that Mary will always lead us without fail closer to Jesus, let's pray to her today for her intercession, and ask her to guide us, to be that model, to lead us closer to her son. We can pray, Mary, how can I be a conduit for God's love like you are? Who is God calling me to love? Help me to do so humbly, just like you do. Help me too to be full of grace.